are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Can you hear the rain here?
No, I can't. Is it raining outside?
It's just stopped for a second, but yeah, it's been raining all morning, pretty much. It's
It's a
quite
good
nice.
kind of rain?
Yeah. It's like it's a comforting rain. You know, when you're sitting on the boat and it's lovely.
Gentle summer rain, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been really hot recently, so it's a bit of a respite from the heat, which is great. The humidity has been mad. It's kind of like Japan at the moment. It feels like those sort of those August days where you just get such high humidity, and even standing still, you drip with sweat. Kind of feels like that at the moment.
Oh, that's cool.
But you're in winter, right?
Yeah, cold, brutal, but we're coming out of it, so it's all good.
Good, man.
I always like to talk about the weather, as you know, but today we're talking about Kyoto.
We are. Yeah, we got quite a bit to discuss about that.
Well, we've got a new city. We've got a new Wonder of the Night city.
We do.
Kyoto. So it's been a long time in the making. But it's now live on wonderthenight.com. And it's kind of, I guess, a bit of a hometown for you in a way.
Yeah, it really does feel like my second home, Kyoto. And I was thinking about it recently, what draws me so much to Kyoto. And I think my relationship and my fondness with Kyoto is very much in relationship to living in Tokyo. You know, living and working and busting your ass in Tokyo all day, every day, and then you go back to Kyoto. Me and my wife went back to Kyoto often to visit. It was like a break. It was it was a respite. And so I saw the city as this sort of like escape rabbit hole, like a bolt hole, they call it. And so my relationship with Kyoto and the reason why I love it so much is because it always signified this, this short end of the manic the manicness that is Tokyo.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Like you can get away, get away from it. And I think a lot of places can kind of fill that area. Kyoto, for myself as well. I've got a few memories, different times in my life where I've gone to the city and I've explored it. It's a really walkable place. It's lots of little things to discover. A lot of curiosity in the city. And a lot of history as well. When did you first go to Kyoto?
Well, actually, it was back when I was living in South Korea. I was teaching English in South Korea, and we had a long 5-day weekend. I think Chuseok, it's called in Korean. And so me and a few friends, we came over to Japan, and we visited Osaka, of course, and we visited Kyoto. And I was young, I was stupid, I was very much, it was just a party weekend for me. So we went clubbing and we were drinking and eating all the time. So I didn't really see much of that wonder, that beauty. But then the next time, the time that really changed me was, when living in Australia with Chia, we went over to Kyoto to visit her family. And I'd already met them, but we went over there basically to see them and see them in Kyoto. And it changed my life, man. It was, we only went for a week, but it was so magical. And it's quite a lazy word, I think, to describe Kyoto as magical because it's so easy to say, but it really is, like it really is a beautiful city. And we wandered along the river at night, and there's fireflies. It really is like a Ghibli movie. It's a wonderful, wonderful city.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. The first time I ever went to Kyoto would have been when I was at university, and I too was young and impressionable, and I went with two friends, and we just it was just good, wholesome fun. I remember we took the Shinkansen from Tokyo Station, and we're just, everything's a laugh, everything was a bit of fun. And I think the first place we arrived was actually Kyoto. And we only went through for the day. I think we ended up staying the night in Osaka, and doing a few other things, and we went down to Kobe. But just that first day in Kyoto, and it was quite warm. I want to think it was summer, but I don't remember it being ungodly hot. But it was definitely warm. It was likely summer. In fact, I think it might have been the summer break, but maybe at the beginning or the end when it wasn't quite as warm as the middle of it. But whatever it was, we turned up and we basically just walked around, and we had all this intention of going to all the temples and stuff, but I think that quickly fell away, and we ended up just staying in a couple. We went to a cafe up on a hill somewhere, and we were just laughing away the afternoon. I think we were like the only people in there, and there's sort of like the old grandma who was running the place, and we couldn't understand anything she said. And yeah, we just drank coffee and laughed the afternoon away, and then I think we managed to catch a bus back to the station to get the train down into Osaka. But it really was a lot of fun, and I wrote a story about this actually. Yeah. I think I've called it the Glass Bottle of Memories.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I think that's the name of it. And that story is kind of a mixture of a few different things, but that kind of, I think, captures that essence of sort of the summer of youth, and just those old days when you could just go and do stuff like that. And it was just such fun and so simple. And the second time I went, I think it might have actually been for a photo festival. I think it would have been pre-Danchi, but I was working on Danchi. And it was it's called Kyotography. It's like quite a big photo festival they have there every year. And I went over there and I was talking to the judges. I was at the portfolio review, showed them some of my work, walked them through the series. And at that time, I was staying on the other side of the river in a nice little spot. And I just sort of wandered around. So I went and had the photo event, but it wasn't particularly busy for some reason. And I don't know what it was, but there weren't actually that many people in town. And so I was just walking around by myself. I went by myself, had my cameras and stuff, and I was just walking around taking photos. And that was when I took the photo actually that we see in the new Wander the Night. So that was just a real wander around. And it was really nice because the first time when I was with my friends, we didn't stay until the evening. And actually, now that I think about it, I think we stayed sort of until dusk. And then we caught the train into Osaka, but we didn't stay into the night. And so this second time when I was able to wander around and get some photos and just kind of get a feel for the city. And I definitely I know what you mean when you mention the Ghibli sort of feel. And I also get an impression with a lot of the game studios, like Nintendo's based out of there, like just some of the way the streets are laid out, you see that come through in video games, like old school video games. Like there was an area, it might have been Gion or somewhere, but it just reminded me so much of sort of like an RPG game laid, just the way it was laid out.
Yeah. Or even like Street Fighter, like the old beat 'em ups or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you got this kind of grid and then these old streets, and they're real narrow and just little alleyways everywhere. But they're not like Tokyo alleyways. They're a lot more kind of open to the sky. There's no skyscrapers. It's just sort of these little, delicate side streets.
Yeah, there's some law, I think, in Kyoto against they're not allowed to build buildings that are higher than a certain number of floors, to keep the sky open and to keep it looking nice. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So yeah, that was that. And then I think I might have gone back another time. I might have gone back once more, but I haven't really spent that much time there. I've spent maybe a little bit more time in other parts of Japan, but for some reason I just never, had enough reason to go there, more regularly than I did, unfortunately. But looking back, I would have liked to have spent some more time there. I actually, in fact, I remember the second time I went when I was doing Danchi, and I met with a guy who did a lot of renovation of the, they call them the eel houses, like the real narrow townhouses that you have in parts of Kyoto. And he got in and he was renovating those. and turning them into, because a lot of them were quite dilapidated, but he would go on and fix them up. And he was telling me the story, and we went to some really nice cafes, and just there's little parts of the city which are just really quite idyllic, and people who have gone there know what I mean. But it really is quite magical, as you say, and it definitely left an impression on me.
Yeah, Gion especially is a beautiful area, and Kawaramachi is nice, lots of lovely back streets.
I think I actually might, looking back, I'd have to have a real, go through my diary, I guess. But I do think I might have gone back once more before I went back when I took this photo. There might have been another time in between, because I had a friend who was living. In fact, the friend who I went to Kyoto with the first time, he ended up living in Kyoto, working for some big company, and it was in the south of the city, and so it's actually quite an industrial area, and there's sort of different parts of the city, and so you've got the old quarter, but if you go down south, it actually does get a lot more industrial, and there's quite a few manufacturing factories and that sort of thing. And I remember. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say the area where Nintendo is based, like you would imagine it to be like this beautiful old Kyoto area with this beautiful old building where Nintendo is inside, but actually it's very industrial, and the building is really grey and boring. And even the Nintendo sign on the outside of the building is grey or something. It's not the red that we associate. It's horrible.
Yeah. But I remember, in the south of the city, walking along the banks of the river, and there's highways in that area, the sort of looming highways over everything. And it was definitely a bit of a different vibe. And then there's that corridor that goes down through to sort of Osaka, and you can take the train down. So, I think there's different parts of the city, and I think there's definitely some more wonders to be had one day. I'm sort of looking back, I think, there's definitely be a lot more to see. And I, for some reason, I guess I never really connected the dots between a lot of Mishima's work, and his writing and some of the locations in Kyoto, which now I think going back, I would love to go and kind of retrace some of those steps, with Kinkakuji and some of those locations, and just kind of like try and feel it a bit more, derive it out and sort of see where everything is and sort of put myself back into that. I think I did a bit more of that in Tokyo. But that's all for the next adventure, I guess.
Yeah, man, maybe we can meet in Kyoto one day and like you say, take a book, and a Japanese author and sort of explore the areas that they're talking about. I think Spring Snow is in Tokyo, is that right? But some of his books are set in Kyoto.
No, there's definitely connections with Kyoto and a lot of his work.
Definitely. But it's really interesting, just going back to, you said it wasn't so busy in the city when you visited for the second time. It's quite, it's quite different from the normal Kyoto. It's always busy, isn't it? It's usually always full of foreigners. And just during COVID, before I left Japan, me and Chia went down to Kyoto, and because of COVID, of course, there was no foreigners there at all. No Americans, no Chinese, no Koreans, no nothing. And we really did see the city in a different light. It really was. We went to Kiyomizu-dera, and there was about 10 people. Or, I might be exaggerating a little bit, but there was hardly anybody. And of course, they're all Japanese, so they were being mindful and careful. But it's quite amazing to see what is such a usually thriving, busy city to be dead. And it made it more beautiful. It made it more Ghibli-esque and more interesting.
Yeah, it's got a charm to it, I guess. I saw some real similarities between like Kyoto and when I went down to Taichung in Taiwan. Like it was, I guess, laid out in the same way with this sort of grid structure as a kind of a new city. And I definitely got some real deja vu, and I've written about this before, but some of Tainan and Taichung especially, that they've got this kind of like echo of Kyoto. And so there's little areas where you've got little canals and sort of you can sit on the banks of the canal, and there's little, alleyways and things. And it kind of reminds me a lot of Kyoto, but with this kind of a little bit more of an edge. And I always thought that was interesting because they were kind of built, they were modeled off it. in terms of the sort of the urban planning during the imperial period. So I found that quite interesting. There's this kind of duality, and at the same time, in a way, like I was kind of looking for the real Kyoto when I was there, and I think I found aspects of it, but it is hard to tell because it is sort of, there's so much that's put on.
Touristy, yeah.
Yeah, and it is interesting how that kind of references itself, and because it's so mediated in that sense, what is the real city? And that's always what I've been looking for, is, you know, what is the actual Kyoto, and what you know, where can I find that? And I found when I did go wandering around, you know, the alleyways and seeing just the details and trying to capture that, I started to kind of build a mind map of what that is, but only really spending one night there, it wasn't enough, I think, to really truly capture the city. And yeah, it's I think there's definitely, I would like to go back and see more of it, and just maybe get to know a few more people there, and just sort of see what's happening.
Yeah, but it's interesting what you say about trying to understand the real Kyoto, because you know, of course, we are outsiders, we are foreigners, so we can only guess what we think is the real Kyoto, right? And it's quite unfortunate, but Kyoto has quite a negative image in other Japanese people's minds. Like, you know, I hear often that Kyoto people are quite snobby or snobbish, but I'm not sure it's necessarily true. It's just that sort of stereotype that other Japanese people have of Kyoto, like, oh yeah, we're the original capital, we are the traditional center, you know. But I've never met a Kyoto resident that is actually like that, right? I think it's a stereotype, caricature.
Yeah. I don't know. It's as I said, I think there's more exploration to be done. I'm really interested in going back and looking at some of the literary connections, because I know, you know, like one of Mishima's translators, Donald Keane, was living in Kyoto for many years after the war, and you know, I think it was quite a different city back then, and it has become quite mediated. It's kind of the go-to destination, and so you do have to kind of scratch the surface a bit to get to the goods, and that can be in different ways as well. You know, it might not be the old city as such. It might be, you know, going out to some of the surrounding areas. You know, I'm really interested in some of the smaller satellite towns that are sort of up in the hills around Kyoto and that.
Keihoku is an absolute beautiful journey. It's like an hour and a half away north, and you have to drive up through the mountains to get there. I've got some beautiful field recordings from Keihoku, actually, which I might play in this podcast.
Yeah, please.
Which would be really nice. And it's just, it's like you say, it's a mountain town. All of the buildings are dilapidated, falling down. They've had generations of families living in them, and they're literally just standing alone by the side of the road, all the woods falling apart, rotting away. This whole life, this whole generation of a family, or multiple generations of a family, just rotting away by the side of the road as you drive up through the mountains. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I remember when I went there, probably the last time it was, I found this little place doing oden, and I walked in and just sort of let myself in and start chatting with the master, and it was quite a funny situation, because I, you know, just turning up and being like, hey, you know, can I grab some oden, like, and he's like, oh, you know, like, when we started having this conversation, and he had all these little masks up on the wall, and I think they might have been from like Knoll, you know, like the theatre. And I was just chatting about it, but I was really surprised at how small they were, you know, because I think you wear them over your face, but they're really tiny, these masks. And I remember chatting to him, and I took a few photos around that area, and just, I don't know, I just sort of drifted in and out of places. It was quite a strange sensation, you know. There's these little, really nice little canals that just sort of run through some between houses and things. You know, really, like, you could jump over them. Really, they're so small. And then I remember walking around, and I sort of just followed the grid of the city. And as you go north, you know, I think I came to one of the larger temples that they have in the middle of the city, which has a bit of a park around it. So I sort of went around that and up and around, and I just sort of followed my nose all night. and it was quite easy to navigate as well, because it is that grid. You can just kind of keep going, and you find your way back eventually.
Yeah, but you're good at that. I mean, you're good at wandering around the city and
Yeah.
hunting out the goods.
Yeah, no, I like to I like to build a bit of a mental picture in my mind, of like a mental map, and I'm pretty good at finding my way back most of the time. But yeah, well, it really was quite beautiful, and there was a bit of a light rain. I remember it was sort of a bit misty, and yeah, just the city. It's so flat as well. That's the thing that you can just kind of keep going. But yeah, I think we do need to catch up again and go over there and just.
We do. We should meet there. Yeah, we can just both fly there. But just going back to the picture, I know it was a long time ago, so you might not remember exactly. But is there anything that you can tell us about this picture? I mean, what are we looking at here? Is it houses? Is it a hotel? I'm not even, a restaurant.
This is actually, I think this is the Kamo River across from that. I was staying on the far side of it, I think it was south of Gion. And I wandered up, and I remember just sort of a bit further up from this line of buildings, there's this really nice Art Deco structure, probably about 3 or 4 stories. And it had like a kind of quite an eloquent Chinese restaurant in it. And I went and I crossed over the river, and I was just sort of walking up and down, and this really caught my eye. And I think it might have been actually on the way back from the wandering. I'm just trying to think now. Oh, no, sorry. It was earlier in the evening, so there's still people around, because I've got another photo where I've got just sort of captured a bike, like a bike sort of drifting past under these lights. But I decided to go with this one. But yeah, I believe these are restaurants which you can get to from the other side, and they look out over the river. So where I'm standing from is just on the bank of the river. And yeah, so potentially if it was flooded, the water might come up to here.
I see.
But I loved how you could sort of see into all of the little boxes and see the people's lives, but there's not actually anyone there,
Yeah, it's an amazing moment. You haven't caught any people at all. I don't know how you've done it. And I love the rain on the ground. You can see this sort of shine of the rain. That's fantastic.
But yeah, definitely that night, it was a classic to arrive, wandering around with my gear and just sort of being in a new city, and seeing it for the first time, and it really was quite inspiring. And it's kind of like a ... Like I do think there's more to be seen there, and I feel, spending all this time away from all of this stuff, I'm kind of inspired to return to these places and kind of revisit them in a way. Like I was having this idea the other night, but I haven't really published or shown that much actually from even Tokyo. I've got this huge library of images, but in a way I'm like looking now, if I was to go back and do like the book or do the series, it would probably be an evolution upon all of the work I've already done. Whereas a lot of this earlier stuff was it was almost kind of like the establishing shots. I feel like I could go back now and actually do a lot more of the other stuff and really flesh it out, if you know what I mean.
More high level stuff.
Yeah, like just even the details, like I think, I think it is important to reflect on your practice, right? And as I work through this New Zealand series, which is coming together, really, really quite well, I look at sort of a lot of the formative work, and things like this, which were a number of years ago now. This Kyoto wander, it really was quite formative at the time. But if I was to go back and explore this place again and look into it and derive it, it would probably be, I could see myself going into it a lot deeper than I did at the time. Yeah.
We talk quite a lot on the podcast about how spending such a long time away from home allows us to see it in a new light. Returning home after 10 years and seeing things completely different from how we experienced them when we were young. Do you think that possibly you would experience Japan differently now that you've had a bit of time away?
Oh, certainly. I think. I've pretty much gone through a new phase in my life since I've been back. I've moved into this next phase, and with the work I'm doing now, I'm feeling it's feeling a lot more cohesive and coherent, I want to say, but it's sort of it's got a lot more to it. And so, I think what I see myself doing is taking some of these establishing shots, which I've done with the older work, and then using that as a springboard to go into something a bit deeper. And for example, those eel houses, the unagi no ie that I mentioned before, the kind of old Kyoto lane houses, I see that there's like a monograph on that, or there's a series kind of going back and exploring, in the footsteps of Mishima and what he, the locations and kind of the ideas that were explored in his books, or that sort of thing, where you're kind of diving into it a bit more with the context. Whereas this generative work, at the time, that was a lot more like a kind of a brainstorm, like a visual brainstorm, where I'm going out there and I'm kind of wandering, and it's 0 to 1 generation of ideas, but there's not necessarily a fully fledged idea there, and it kind of takes time for that to mature out and come out, and then you can take that and that becomes something bigger down the track,
Yeah, I see that with my music as well. My formative times were sort of Soundscapes Radio, episodes 1, 2, 3, 4. I was sort of experimenting, finding my style. 5 and 6 was sort of like getting there. 7, I sort of really hit on something. I really sort of hit a nerve deep within me, and I really enjoyed number 7. And still people, mentioned to me that 7 is their favorite. And then so it really did take this time to just kind of have fun and play around and mess things up and make mistakes, and then find something that was great and then run with that. And then from 10 onwards, I feel like I'm getting there. Like I feel like I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, just zooming out a bit from all of this, but like, it is really strange to look back on your old work and sort of identify the trends and sort of the formative moments. And that's kind of been, I guess, my position lately, where I've been going through a lot of my older images and sort of trying to think, okay, what was I trying to get at here? What was the genesis here? What was I trying to create? And at the time, maybe I didn't have the contextual or the technical skills to actually execute that every time. But now, it's like, as I work through it, in most cases, I do have the technical or the conceptual skills to actually do it. And so it kind of changes things in a little bit. You almost do less in a way. So when you're sort of just creating this, in this earlier part of the piece, you're just pushing it out and seeing what works for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely realized that recently, that especially with January earlier this year, the project where I was creating a little loop every day in January. My first initial instinct was just to fill these loops with as much music as I could, and sort of like, so each track that I was producing was quite busy, dense, and thick in sound. And then as the month progressed and I was making more of these pieces, I was more interested in stripping it down and trying to get as much emotion from as little music as possible. And sometimes you just realize, I don't need all these layers. I don't need all of this to tell the story that I'm trying to tell with this song or this music or something. So a lot of the times I would start writing in haste and put all these ideas down, and then eventually I'd end up deleting a third or even sometimes a half of what I'd made, and then it was right, and then it was good.
That's interesting you mentioned that. It's almost like creative destruction, right? Like just getting rid of stuff. And editing, it's where it sort of often gets made, But in terms of that though, like I think, just getting back to the bigger topic, I guess, in terms of creativity, right, for us and the way we work. I've had an interesting experience lately with work and just work, as you know. We've been talking about this, but I started a new job and then I quit a new job since we last spoke. And I wanted to share a little bit about that, just for you, and just also for our listeners, to just kind of give a bit of an insight into how some things can pan out for for people. So
Mm.
I think maybe the last time we caught up, I had started some new work.
I think it was, yeah, just starting, literally. Yeah.
So some design work, and that was cool. And I thought, yeah, this is kind of what I need to just, fill up these these cold, short winter days. But I ended up basically not, something in my, like, it was like a fuse that just burnt out. I was just like, I can't do this. I can't create this work for other people. And I really wanted to do it. I thought, I want to kind of give this a go. But it was like, yeah, at the end of the day, I can't push myself into this box to create this stuff which I don't believe in. Which, in terms of this design work I was doing, it was really just process work. I wasn't. It wasn't any different to any other place that I've ever worked. It's just the same old stuff. And I remember just trying really hard to try and make it work and grin and bear it. But I was like, why am I even trying to do this? I'm kind of fighting the machine. I'm fighting in myself. I gotta let it go. So actually, I resigned from the airplane. Actually, I was flying up to Auckland again recently, and the plane had Wi-Fi on it. So I actually sent my resignation letter from the air, which was cool. I think maybe a first for me. I don't know about you, but
21st century, yeah.
21st century. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I was working. And they're great people, like they were really nice people and that, but it just wasn't me, Yeah. I wasn't on board with the vision. It was just process work. It was agency work, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't lie to myself. And in a way, I think back to, say, when I was a bit younger, I probably could have kept going. I probably could have lied to myself a bit more and said, "Oh, I'll just do it a bit more." But at this point, man, it's like, fuck it, straight away. I just know, and it's like, it's not me. I can't do it. It's not fitting the creative vision. So it needs to go, and it's a bit painful sometimes, but it's kind of easier to just pull the plaster off,
Yeah, well, if you're relying on that money or that paycheck or something, it becomes very difficult. But it sounds like you're in a privileged position where you can sort of...
no, I mean, so I'm, number one, I am unemployable in the sense that I'm a bit like my old man. Like, it's hard for me to work for other people. But it's number two, I've always thought I'd rather be poor than lose my freedom. And that's a bit of a hard line. But I've been poor before and had a lot of freedom and a lot of free time, and it's been all good. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's just taking it a bit too far, but
no, that's fantastic, man. Yeah,
that's just me, man. Like, I can't not do that. And I mean, I am lucky in a sense that I got some other work that I'm doing, and I got my creative work, which is happening. But I thought, that I could make this work, and it would be a nice little bonus for a bit. But I can't. I found out quickly that I can't. But interesting though, this reminds me a lot. Actually, we've been talking about this thing of this 10-year cycle, right? It's been an ongoing theme. And when I first was in Japan, I remember working for a design agency as well. I got a job. I just fucking turned up and was like, talked my way into the place. I didn't really have any skills at the time. But the exact same thing happened back then. I was like, really, like, just pretending to work. I was just pretending to sit at my desk and, like, literally just moving my mouse around the screen, not doing anything, because I just was, like, absolutely unmotivated to work on the stuff which didn't have any meaning. And I remember at the time that was probably the genesis for kind of proto-derive. I remember back then I was working these long hours, and I was in Ueno, and I remember that, like, after work and stuff, I'd walk around and just start wandering the city, and that was kind of the early days before I even had a camera. And so in a way, I'm kind of like reliving that again and being like, okay, cool, I see what happened. I've just done the same thing I did all of those years ago. I've just done it again. Ago.
You've started the cycle again.
Yeah, I'm reliving the cycle again. And it wasn't quite 10 years ago for that. Like, university was 10 years ago, but the job was a little bit less. But the cycle is coming again. I'm like, okay, cool. What does this mean? I've got, like, another huge creative project that's coming along.
Well, it kind of reminds me of this quote from Mary Oliver. Yeah, I always talk about Mary Oliver. I absolutely love her. Late poet, Mary Oliver. She says, "I was very careful never to take an interesting job. I took lots of jobs, but if you have an interesting job, you get interested in it. I also began in those years to keep early hours. If anybody has a job and starts at 9, There's no reason why you can't get up at 4:30 or 5 and write for a couple of hours and give their employers their second best effort for the day, which is what I did. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, again, I think this is important in a way, like, because one thing that I thought was interesting, just the second time around, being, I guess, a little bit more observant this time, working in this agency, again, great people, nice, friendly, very young. I just got this impression that, that these bundles of energy that these people have. And I used to be like that, like I used to be just bumping around, and just being able to do stuff. And as you get a bit older, as you move through your career, I guess, you start to be like, I haven't got the energy to blow on stuff. You got to put it, you've still got the energy you need to do the things you need to do, but you haven't got the energy to blow on things that don't matter. And so some of the projects, some of the ideas, some of the meetings, I'm like, I'm not here. I'm sorry, but I'm not here. I'd rather be writing. I'd rather be working on my book. I'd rather be working on the exhibition.
Your vision. Yeah.
My vision. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is, and I think in a way, and I kind of, it's a bit of a shame, I think, with COVID and that, because I have been sort of around a few people who are kind of coming of age in various various ways, and because of COVID, it's kind of locked down a lot of ability to just go out and do stuff. And so there's like almost this generation who are going to potentially miss that chance to go and just do that silly thing that you get to do when you're 21, which you don't necessarily get, later. And you got this window where you can do that. And whether you take the opportunity or not, it doesn't stay available to you, I don't think. As much as I'd like to say, it doesn't matter, it kind of does.
Yeah.
And so what you do between the ages of 18 and 28 kind of make a real big difference, and you can be silly and you can blow money, you can be poor, you can write a book and live however you want to live, because you're basically generating the foundations of your creative life. You're creating the memories,
I think you're right about the age range there is pretty good, 18 to 28. But the way I see it is it's never too late to start again. It's never too late to keep changing, change yourself, move on.
You're exactly right. I think, and I totally agree with you there. So I don't want to be so like I'm making some hard lines there in the sand, but I guess you kind of get to just do it though when you're in that first bracket. And the second time round, if you want to come back to it, you really, look at how much you and I have to talk about this and theorize how it all works, because it's not as easy to do it the second time around. It takes a lot more effort.
It does, especially if you've got family or other responsibilities and
and even just your own conception of yourself. I think you're perhaps a little bit more naive when you do it the first time around. You get to just go out and create this work that just is meaningless potentially for anyone else except you. And it's because it's generational for yourself. It's your own creative hot pot, I guess. And with my imagery, it's like a lot of the stuff is just establishing shots of ideas, which one day I could come back and flesh out a bit more. But I think that's you kind of you got to just push that, and do that as much as you can. And then later on you can do that as well. But it's good to start early, I guess. But it's never too late to start either.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to this question already. But what are your views on revisiting old work and sort of remixing, redoing, revisiting, and editing again? Is it better to just leave that in the sand?
There's two issues. So the first issue from a purely, I guess, market point of view is that, maybe you've got old work that's actually quite valuable and people are interested and they want to see the story and they want to discover it. But if you haven't got a platform for people to discover it, you kind of miss out in sharing that. And I think that's a problem I struggle with a little bit, which I've been thinking about on and off. How do I actually get this stuff out there? Even I don't necessarily know how much work I've done because it's all in different places and kind of spread around. So kind of coherently bringing that together, which is really hard when it's your own thing because you always want to just make it perfect and keep editing it. But there's that issue, but then I think also from a conceptual point of view, you got to keep moving forward, you know, and sort of some of the real blue sky broad strokes are always going to be there, but in terms of the actual execution and the concept, I think you always need to be pushing the envelope. Otherwise, you'll be treading water, and you become this kind of process machine where you're creating the same kind of stuff. And there's something about that doesn't really appeal to me too much, you know, like creating the same kind of work. I always want to be trying to push it. It's the same concepts, but sort of some of the same fundamentals, but trying to look at it in new and innovative ways and trying to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, I guess, my answer. How about for you?
It's interesting because we come from different artistic backgrounds. You know, you're a photographer, you're a sort of image creator and a story creator, whereas I am a musician, and it's much easier for me to go back to old work and remaster it and remix it and sort of change that sound there and stuff like that. You know, all it takes is for me to just load up Ableton and just change an instrument, and then the whole track would be different. So the draw is there for me. You know, I have older work that I think is almost perfect, and I would love to just tinker with it a little bit further, but at the same time, I don't want to get distracted by doing that. I want to keep creating new stuff and refining my sound, and not spending too much time re-going old stuff. Because, you know, to be honest, I could go back to Soundscapes Radio episode 1 and redo that, remix it and remaster it and then re-release it. But is that really a worthy use of my time? Should I be just focusing on the next episode, for example?
Yeah, then I think one of the big discoveries for me has been there was just, I don't mean, like, I'm trying to zoom out here, but like, I want to call it like museumification, right? Where it's like you idealize and idolize your older work because it represented this more beautiful and naive period in your life where everything was good. And in a way, I think when I was in this creation phase, you know, where I was out there just generating this work, there wasn't really time to reflect on what it meant at the highest level. Yeah. And it's only been since I came back and I've really spent time looking at it that I'm able to kind of put that into perspective, because that phase has finished for the moment anyway. And so I can look back and be like, okay, well, the pre-COVID derive Cody in Japan phase, this is what it meant. This is what it looked like. You know, this is the canon. You know, these are the images we've got. They're all here. This is the series. And in a way, COVID has, you know, sort of categorized that. And then everything that's created after that is post-COVID. It's post, you know, me in New Zealand working on this New Zealand series. It's very personal, very curated, very conceptual. And so it's going to necessarily be quite different. And I think those will be some major milestones in the work. And so going back to some of the early stuff and even this Kyoto journey, you know, I look at that as it's ancient history in a way, you know. And, you know, maybe I can come in and re-edit it, rework with imagery and that. But in terms of the concept, it is sort of fossilized in time now. And at the time when I was still back there, it didn't seem like that. It seemed like it was just an ongoing thing that just lived in my hard drive and that. But now it definitely seems a lot more historical. And so to kind of bring that out, I think it is a retrospective in this case because it's unreleased, and it really pairs well with what you're doing. But I'm definitely I see it for what it is, which is the work. The wandering work that I was doing at the time, and the concepts that I'm working on now, which I think have evolved a lot from then. I'm really excited to apply those back to the subject matter when the time comes.
Yeah.
And kind of just as you know, just sort of keep moving forward with it. But yeah, that's all quite conceptual.
Yeah, conceptual and deep. I love it.
Yeah.
talking about, new music, maybe we can just circle back to Wonder the Night and have a little chat about the track that I wrote
Yeah.
for Kyoto. So this track, like most pieces that I work on recently, was finished like 80% quite quickly. Like I did what I always do. I just mess around with sounds in Ableton and sort of just try different chord patterns and different melodies and, different leitmotifs and stuff like that. So I just loaded up. Like, I think when I first started writing this track, I was listening to a lot of Angus McRae, and also a lot of C. Buckthorn. These two artists, they both use a lot of cello in their work, especially C. Buckthorn. And I was listening to that a lot, and I was getting really inspired by that. So I wanted to start writing a piece with cello, just cello. So, loaded one up and started playing around with it. And I had pretty much 80% of the track done in one night. At least the skeleton of it, like the melody, the main melody that you can hear, the chord patterns, and it was just a bare bones track. But it was, I had the idea of where it was going and stuff. And what happened is that I got stuck because I mentioned this last time on the podcast, that there was just something missing. There was just something that wasn't right with it. So I went away a lot, and I had a chat to good friends who are musicians and sort of, got their ideas about it. And I think what was missing eventually was that there was just no no bass, no lower tones, no sort of deep resonating sounds in there. So I came back to it, got some underbelly, I called it. All of the tracks that I added after the original parts were called the underbelly, and that sort of describes it a lot. So it got a lot thicker, it got a lot nicer sounding, it got a lot wider, and there's a particularly nice violin part that I really like, which comes in, I think, at about 3 minutes, around about there. And it, to me, I don't know if everybody else experiences it in the same way, but to me, it sounds like this violin is crying. It has this very sort of raw, emotional sound. I will solo it just now so we can listen to it. It was very much inspired by Pink Floyd. Are you a fan of Pink Floyd?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have this theory that Dave Gilmour, the guitarist for Pink Floyd, is one of the only guys in the world who can make a guitar cry. And I'm sure loads of people disagree with that and will be, emailing me angrily. But if you listen to one of their tracks, Marooned, on the Division Bell album, it's the whole track is just one long guitar solo. But he really, really does make that guitar cry. And he even has the kind of like, when you're like fully crying about something and then you breathe in and you're like, he even creates that sound with the guitar. Wow. It's incredible. It's absolutely amazing the way he does it. And I ask people to go listen to that track and just think about it like a crying baby or a crying woman or man or something.
Yeah.
Because it really, and anyway, so going back to, this, I found this sound, this violin sound, and to me, it really sounds emotional and sounds like crying. So that kind of, in a way, sort of reflects me leaving Kyoto and like the emotion that
Yeah.
I felt surrounding leaving Japan and Kyoto and leaving all of that behind.
That's beautiful, man. I'm gonna have another listen to it after this and just kind of try and pick that out a bit more, because I mean I've been listening to the track a lot, but it's all together for me. It's all just it's one thing, but if I'll go back through and just see if I can
Yeah, yeah.
ride the riff a bit more. Yeah, that's great.
It's quite a deep track. It's got a lot of layers, which is interesting because earlier, just like 10 minutes ago, I said that I was trying to cut layers from my music, but this track, if you look at it in Ableton, is absolutely really thick.
Yeah, man. No, it's it sounds great, and I think it's good that we've been able to come back and put another city in.
Yeah.
And it's definitely quite an emotional track. I think I can feel that. I've always had this idea. I mean, it takes me back, but like this idea of like the last train out of somewhere. And I remember it was always a thing for me. It was like, catching the last train, or like, watching the lights of the city recede as you leave a place, and you know that you're not going to return. And in a way, it's like a lot of these wanders, pre-COVID. I hate COVID, but it's like it's kind of just locked stuff into history, and the genre, the everything, not just for me, but for a lot of people, the idea of going to a place and wandering around is now like it's not even a thing anymore in a lot of the world, or at least it's changed. Even if you perform the same action, it's changed in meaning, and in a way, there's this kind of melancholy with that, because it seemed so naive and carefree at the time. It was so beautiful that I could just go and I could go with my friends and go by myself and just walk the streets and have a good time, and no one seemed to mind. And now, the world's a different place. Things have changed. And just like, there was a period in time with music, there's certain genres that represent periods in time. To go back and kind of make music that sounds like that doesn't mean that you're actually going back in time. All it means is you're kind of copying that moment that existed. And with cinema, with any creative medium, there's this kind of eras, and you can remix that and take that out and give it another life. But the era as it was, the people who were doing things, the life, and the kind of the zeitgeist that existed around then, you can't go back to that. And so I don't know. Do you sort of know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally do. And it reminds me of recently, me and Chia watched Chet Baker's documentary, Let's Get Lost. This was like West Coast America, 1940s, 1950s. And, blues, jazz were huge. France was a huge inspiration for them, like the French culture, and everything was super romantic, and bars were full of smoke and everyone was drinking. And I wonder if you'd like to go back to that world.
Well, I mean, there's always the rose-tinted glasses, right? Like, what was it really like? And I mean, that always comes back to my work, where I'm trying to uncover these layers of a place. And with a city like Tokyo, I was like always trying to find the old days and kind of the remnants of that have kind of fossilized and sort of passed through time. But that the more time, I mean, looking at it, I guess as a movement, the work, not just myself, but you and my other friends, we were all doing this thing, and it was this kind of this emotion, and there was this emotion in it, and now that's not really a thing. And the way people create work has changed, the way people share their work has changed, and things have kind of solidified, kind of frozen a little bit. And for me, I think it's kind of what I needed, and it's been really productive with my, I guess, taking my concepts to the next level. But we had fully intended on just continuing, exploring and going. And in a way, though, it has been beneficial because it's kind of it's taken me back. I've cycled back, and I'm going back to the roots that led to this whole thing in the first place. And so I've been learning Chinese. I've been going back into my own work and looking at that. I mean, I'm still a beginner, but I went to this language exchange, and I also went and saw a Chinese movie with my friend, and I was like, man, my Chinese got like 50% better in one day. I mean, I kind of sucked already, but like it's so basic that it's like it doesn't take much to get 50% better. And I can actually have a bit of a conversation with the DD drivers and stuff now. And it's like, man, that wouldn't have probably happened if I had kept going on at the pace I was going prior.
Well, that's it. Ultimately, COVID gave you this sort of breathing space to think about these things and pause for a second. And that's a great thing that happened.
Yeah, and it's sort of silence as well. We're between tracks. You got this sort of moment where it's like you can actually reflect. And so, I mean, I've never felt super oppressed or I guess upset with this COVID situation. It's been pretty good in New Zealand. I know it's been a bit more tough for you guys, but I've never felt sort of that there's something wrong with it. I feel like actually there's real opportunity and creative potential beyond it. And the world changes, man. Things change.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to roll with the times, man.
You got to roll with it. And it's beautiful to get, I think, in a way, like I've always been kind of melancholic and nostalgic about the period prior. And so, when I was taking these photos of Kyoto, it's like, what was I nostalgic about? What I was really into is, probably thinking about my time at university or those old days, which are now so far away. It's like they're actually kind of ancient history. And now I'm like, I'm nostalgic about these days. But it's like, it's just a constant process of like looking towards the next time a summer, when is the next summer going to roll around? Because it's pretty cold when, in the middle of winter, but, looking forward to the next thing. And that's finished. And just kind of get through to it,
But we're always nostalgic, aren't we? Like even in university, best times of our lives, we're looking back to times when we were playing video games at home and having no worries at all in life.
And I mean, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Like you do have to get up and do the next thing, and you can always look back with, I think, fondness and nostalgia. And I'm very nostalgic, as you know. But you do at the same time need to keep walking forward, and carrying that with you and carrying that mana, and if you want to go back and remaster your work, you can. But interestingly, when I was up north, and I went and saw Chungking Express actually on the big screen at a cinema with my friends, and it was absolutely amazing. But it was a 4K remaster, and my friend. I mean, it was great, but my friend was like, "Yeah, apparently Wong Kar-wai, he didn't even care like, whether they remastered it or not, because the movie's done." And that was beautiful, and it was like, leave it to someone else, work with a producer or a curator to kind of take your stuff and remaster it if you want to. But really, I think generation and new ideas is where it's at.
Yeah.
And pushing yourself, talking to new people, and kind of ultimately developing yourself. What kind of person was I when I took this photo is a lot different to who I am today. And I think that the guy who took that photo could probably learn a lot from what I'm doing today, and I could probably teach him a few things. And if that's the case, then it's probably not too bad,
Love that. And that was a brilliant segue. We just came around big full circle about, revisiting old work and everything.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's our Kyoto Wander the Night. So people can check that out, wanderthenight.com. If you like what you hear, please feel free to support us.
Sharing is great.
Sharing is great. Or follow. I know you've got a Bandcamp. Is it?
Yeah, right on the bottom of the Wander the Night. We've got the link for that to download the music.
And yeah,
are we going to do another city? Do you think?
I mean, I'd like to do a new city. To be honest, I would like to go out and shoot something new. We'll see when that happens. I mean, I'm keen to add a few more, so we'll just kind of keep it going. And but no, it was good to catch up. And
yeah, it's really good, man. Thank you.
No, thank you. And we might wrap it up there, but I'll probably catch up with you again.
Yeah,
no doubt soon.
100%, 100%, man. I'm excited for it.
Sweet. All right. Thanks.
Great.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye. Have a good night, man.